Welcome. I'm Mike Wakeman with the San Joaquin County and Delta Water Quality Coalition. I'm the Executive Director of the Coalition, and I'll be giving this presentation today. This presentation is for your annual meeting requirement for the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program. You can either watch this video or you can attend one of the meetings in person. Throughout this video, we're going to ask some questions to make sure you're still paying attention, and then you're going to have to fill out the verification form at the end of the video in order to get credit for attending this session. So, what am I going to go through during this whole session? I'm going to go through our monitoring reporting regime that we've done throughout the coalition. We'll cover the 2017-18 requirements, anything new in the program that growers might have to look forward to, and maybe future regulations that are coming forward for growers. And then I'll also cover our coalition finances. So, our 2017 monitoring. We monitor throughout San Joaquin, Contra Costa, and Calaveras County. As you can see here, we got a winter sampling from French Camp Slough from last year. Had pretty good rains going through there. We sample out in Ridge Track, drain out in the islands, as well as many other spots. And you will see Mikey L. Johnson consulting vans out through the coalition. These are actually a consulting firm we have hired in order to do the monitoring for us throughout the coalition area. Our monitoring regime actually consists of several different types of monitoring. We have monitoring our core sites. Core sites is where we go out, we monitor field parameters, which are DO, pH, and those type of things. We also monitor nutrients, bacteria, metals like copper, and then we also do toxicity testing, where we actually see if something is toxic, if the water is actually toxic to certain animals and creatures. We also have a representative monitoring site. These monitoring sites either are based on management plans where we've had exceedances before, or based on exceedances at our core sites. So we have core sites. If we get an exceedance in that water quality level in those core sites, we will go out then and add more representative monitoring sites and check to see if we're actually having exceedances in the representative monitoring sites also. These are all the sites that we actually test at. As you can see, there's quite a few. We have our core sites, and within those core sites we have all of the representative monitoring sites. So if you look at French Camp Slough here, within the French Camp Slough area, we also monitor Duck Creek, Little Johns Creek, Lone Tree Creek, Mormon Slough, and Temple Creek. Here is a map of the coalition and where we monitor. The color actually is, like I was just pointing out, you got Lone Tree Creek, Little Johns, Duck Creek, Mormon Slough, all within this main area. And French Camp Slough, as you can see right here, is our core site, and then these are our representative monitoring sites within the area. You can see we have several large watershed bodies in the areas, but then we also have some smaller ones out on the islands where we're actually monitoring separate islands out there and separate sites in the islands, Delta Islands there. Alright, we also have our TMDL monitoring sites. TMDL stands for Total Maximum Daily Load. These are some of the sites where we're actually out in the waterways, the main channels. We're actually in some of the rivers. We're at Old River. We're in the San Joaquin River. We're over off of Brandon Island. And we're also out in Walthall Slough. These sites we're looking for chlorpyrifos and diazinon. Those are the only thing that they're looking for in these sites. We haven't had any real issues in these sites over the past couple of years because the amount of water is actually flowing through these sites. But it is a requirement that we have to do these total maximum daily load monitoring sites in order to be in compliance with the regulations. So, what have we been finding over this last year? As you can see, we found it had an atrazine hit over this last year. A diron hit. As you can see, diron over the past couple of years has been an issue. We had 3 hits this year, exceedances of water quality standards, which is something we really need to take a look at. Our other issue, of course, has been algae toxicity. I'll get into why and what we think this is being caused by, but algae toxicity is another thing that over the past 3 to 4 years we've had quite a few hits, and it's something we're going to have to address in the future. So, on our pesticide exceedances, what did we find? Atrazine. Okay, these are parts per billion. Yes, that seems very small, but that's what our exceedances, where our 1 part per billion is our exceedance limit. As you can see in atrazine, we had 1.2. On diron, our water quality limit is 2.0 and nanograms per liter. It's parts per billion. As you can see in Duck Creek, we're over that by a little bit, and actually a little bit on Terminus Island and Bacon Island. Diron, of course, is a herbicide, and that's why you see the toxicity from this on the algae toxicities. Atrazine is also a herbicide. The key to these is keep these things on your property. As you can see, the timing of the year, January and February, where some of these might be going on as a pre-emergence pesticide. Make sure that you are not putting these products on right before rain on saturated ground, because if you're putting them on right before rain on saturated ground, it will run off, and we will find them within the water quality, within the water testing that we do. Bacon Island in July, that's probably irrigation. Somebody applied it and then irrigated right afterwards, and it ran off into the stream, and we found it in the stream. All right, so management plans. Management plans are when we have exceedances like we saw, with the diron and the atrazine. We actually have to go out and talk with growers and talk with them about, what are those management practices that need to be employed to make sure we keep these products out of the waterway. So we've done quite a few management plans. Some of you may have been participating in this, where we've actually asked for more surveys and what practices are you going to use, and have sent out information, describing some of the practices you need to use in order to make sure that these products don't run into the waterways. We have completed 25 of these management plans since 2012. That's a success story. That means that we're not finding these products within the water streams anymore. Okay. In order to complete a management plan, we have to go 3 or more years without an exceedance. So in other words, we don't detect above that limit within the water body that we're testing. In 2017, we're not going to petition any management plans completed because we haven't, had any more. In 2018, though, we do have some coming up. If we can keep these areas, Union Island for chlorpyrifos, if we keep that area clean and don't detect any chlorpyrifos, or French Camp Slough, or Temple Creek, or Duck Creek with chlorpyrifos, then we can actually, we would have 3 years clean water, and we can actually remove those from management plans. Means we don't have to test in that area for those products during those times of year. So I talked about toxicity testing. Toxicity testing is where we actually use different creatures in order to determine if the water or the sediment is toxic to these creatures. Ceratophragma, water flea, basically. We use this for water column testing to find out whether or not the water that we have been taking is toxic to these to the Ceratophragma. Halella is one we use for sediment toxicity. So we take these Halella, put them on the sediment that we collect from the bottom of the streams, and see whether or not basically they live or die, or if they have slow down in movement and stuff, that actually to see if any toxicity is affecting these creatures. As I mentioned before, algae toxicity is an issue. Algae toxicity how we actually run the algae toxicity is that we collect the water sample, we put the algae in the water, and we see whether the algae actually lives or dies. What have we found? We've had quite a few algae toxicities throughout the years. Algae is commonly associated with herbicides and metals, such as copper, which is used in agriculture. Again, I go back to about herbicides, making sure you're keeping the product on your property and is not running off your property. And a lot of that has to do with timing and when you apply the product and whether, weather conditions, irrigation conditions and runoff and those type of things really affect whether or not we find it within the waterways. Yes, we know the California Department of State of Boating and Waterways is using glyphosate within the region to control water hyacinth. We do not know whether or not that is affecting our algae toxicities within the region, but all of our algae toxicities are actually occurring within sites in the Delta. Okay. We have conducted a couple toxics identification tests to try to determine what was causing the toxicity for the algae. However, they were pretty inconclusive. We know it might have been a metal. We know it might have been a pesticide. We're just not sure what it would be. So, for our surface water monitoring, if we get 2 or more exceedances of water quality standards, that area has to go to a management plan. And that means that we have to do more testing in that area. We have to do grower outreach and look at things that growers can implement in management practices in order to improve the water quality. In order to get out of those management plans, we need 3 years, like I mentioned before, of clean, not detecting the material. We can remove it from those management plans. And what that allows us to do, it also, we don't have to test as much within that area. So, over the past 14 years, we've been doing monitoring from a list of pesticides that the Regional Water Quality Control Board has provided us. They basically tell us what we need to test for. However, over the last couple of years, they're developing a new protocol for the irrigated lands program throughout the Central Valley. What this protocol does is they're looking to get testing on all those chemicals that are currently being used by agriculture. A lot of the stuff we were testing before wasn't being used by agriculture. It's maybe some legacy pesticides that have been removed from the market and therefore not used by agriculture, but yet we are still testing for them. This is a two-edged sword. The good thing is that now we're actually testing for those chemicals that we are using. We were testing for some of them, but not all of them. The concern, of course, from the coalition is now are we going to find a bunch of new chemicals and present some new concerns for us in order for ways to growers to implement management practices to try to keep it out of the waterways. So what is the new testing regime based on? We look at pesticide use report data. We look at monitoring results from past programs. We look at the fate of the product. Is it soluble? Is it volatile? Where is it going to go? And then we also try to determine whether there's laboratory analytical methods for these products. Because if there's no way to analyze it, then it really doesn't help us on what's going on within the water quality. These will be starting, actually this new protocol has started. We're using it currently. It started in October of 2017. And we're going out for our first testing here in October and November. And that will give us an idea of what we're going to find using this new protocol. Hopefully it gives us some more better information, allows us to address those concerns within the water quality from an agriculture standpoint. So here's a list of pesticides that we are actually going to be looking for now. Some of them very common. 2,4-D, it's been around for a year. Bravo, Poncho, of course, Valar, Admire, imidacloprid we're going to be looking at. Dithane. So a lot of these we've seen. Ambush, a pyrethrin down here, which we've is very common. So we're actually going to be looking at the pyrethroids, which is this group here, call them the thrins. And so we're looking for some more of those products which we are currently using. Just like to touch on some of those common sense practices that we need to use when we're using these products to keep it out of the surface water bodies within our coalition region. One thing, follow the label. Follow the label. Follow the label. A lot of stuff for this stuff is on the label. Determine the buffer zones. Make sure you know where your buffer zones are, your wind speed, your drift. Control your drift. It's huge. That's a huge thing. What causes a lot of these water quality exceedances is drift. Know the solubility of the product. That's the other thing that moves products into the waterway, whether it's storm runoff or irrigation runoff. If you have a lot of water running off right after a spray, there's a big chance that we're going to find it within our testing in the water column. So common sense practices go a long way to help. For more information on other practices to implement, don't hesitate to contact our office. We do have people on staff that can help you, on some of those best management practices. Okay, this is your first question of the day. Who is currently the Secretary of Agriculture? And the answer for that is Sonny Perdue. So, when you fill out your verification form, there's going to be a question you're going to have to answer in the back. And the answer for that question is Sonny Perdue. He is currently U.S. Secretary of Agriculture. So, going to go into our next portion of this presentation, which deals with groundwater. Groundwater monitoring, and what we're looking at is nitrates in groundwater. This is a big issue for the state of California, and especially for the Central Valley, where we have a lot of nitrates in the groundwater, which us in agriculture are going to have to address and deal with over the next coming years. What have we done so far? We've done our groundwater assessment and monitoring programs that we've developed. We did a groundwater assessment report. It has been completed. Got conditional approval from the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board. If you wish to view it, you can go to our website at sjdeltawatershed.org, or it's also on the Regional Water Board website. What this groundwater assessment report did, it assessed the risk of groundwater contamination from nitrogen and the movement of nitrates through the soil and other pesticides. Through this report, we designated high and low vulnerable areas based on risk of that movement into the groundwater. And the high and low vulnerable areas actually have different regulations you have to follow within the coalition. Within the coalition, we have developed a trend monitoring program also. This is going to be a network of wells where we can use to determine the water quality. We'll go out. Several of you have received requests for using the wells, and we have gotten volunteers actually to step forward and say, yeah, you can use our well for water quality testing. We're looking for nitrates mostly, and that is what the regional board is looking at. And a trend monitoring program is not determining, what's currently happening. What we're looking at is a trend over the years. So are the nitrates within the water increasing or decreasing over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? That gives us a good idea of what's happening within the basin, and if the management practices we are trying to get growers to implement are actually working to improve water quality. So, we've talked about a lot of the testing and trend monitoring that we as a coalition do. Now this next section is what growers have to do and have to turn in and be compliant with the Central Valley water quality regulations. Us as a coalition are here to help you meet those regulations and help you fill out these forms. So, what do we have to fill out? We have to fill out the farm evaluation forms. And it is a big thing from the Regional Water Quality Control Board to make sure all the forms get filled out. The Regional Water Quality Control Board has actually gone out and fined people over $70,000 for not completing reports and not completing and turning those into the coalition. Again, this is the Regional Water Quality Control Board, the state agency that is actually oversees all of the coalitions. The coalitions are here to help you fill out that paperwork, collect that paperwork, and make sure you're in compliance with the regulations. Coalition does not implement the regulation, or is not the entity that which implements the regulations, but we are the entity that does help the growers be in compliance with the regulations. Farm evaluations will be mailed out in January for both surface and groundwater areas and high vulnerable areas. If you're in a low vulnerable area, you should have filled one out in 2015 and will not have to fill one out again until 2020. Items required in the farm evaluation plan is actually fairly simple. We just need to know the crops that are being grown, the location of the farm, identifying management practices that are being implemented in order to prevent water quality issues, and determine whether or not runoff from sediment is an issue. As you go through these, it's not that difficult, but it does have to be done every year. So the big thing in reports that have to be filled out, and we've talked about nitrates. Nitrates are a big thing in the Central Valley. There's been a concentrated focus from the State Water Board and the Regional Water Quality Control Boards when it comes to drinking water and groundwater. So that means that everybody, whether you're in high and low vulnerable area, has to prepare a nitrogen management plan. These nitrogen management plans are prepared and kept on farm. They're not submitted to the coalition. You have to have your nitrogen management plan for this upcoming year completed by June of 2018. And in the high vulnerable areas, you have to have it certified. And I'll get into how to get its certification here in a little bit. In the low vulnerable areas, it does not have to be certified. Then the other item that has to be filled out is nitrogen summary report. However, if you're in a low vulnerable area, you do not have to fill out a nitrogen summary report and submit it to the coalition. However, if you are in a high vulnerable area, you have to submit your nitrogen summary report to the coalition by June of 2018. Okay, for the crop year of 2017. So basically we're looking back. We're looking back to see what you applied last year on your nitrogen summary report. So remember, so your nitrogen management plans, you're looking forward. What are you going to do for this year, for 2018? When you get the packet in the mail from us, there's going to be a nitrogen summary report. And that is what you applied last year for those in high vulnerable areas. And that needs to be submitted to the coalition. So, certification of nitrogen management plans has to be done in those areas that are in high vulnerable areas. Any of the paperwork we send out to you tells you whether you're in a high or low vulnerable area for groundwater and for leaching of nitrates. Who can certify these plans? It must be a CCA, Certified Crop Advisor, with a nitrogen certificate from CDFA, California Department of Food and Agriculture. The other way you can do it is you can do our grower self-certification program, which we highly encourage you to do. This helps you keep up on nitrates, new things that are going on within applying nitrogen for crops. So we hold self-certification classes will be held on January 11th, January 30th, and February 8th of 2018 for this year. You go online to sign up at sjdeltawatershed.org, or you can call our office. Okay. Self-certification program is a 4-hour class. You do have to pass an exam at the end, and then you have to take continuing education classes over the next 3 years. You have to take 6 hours over the next 3 years in order to keep up on them. So if you've already passed the test, we do have continuing education classes coming up. So if you took the test last year or the year before, and you're looking for those hours for those continuing education classes, those are coming up. coalitions are putting on the 23rd of January, the 6th, and the 15th of February. Again, go to our website at sjdeltawatershed.org and you can sign up for those continuing education classes also. So, common sense nitrogen management. Right time. Pick the right time to put on the fertilizer, when the plant needs it, when it's going to pick it up at that time. You don't want to put it on when it's not going to need it, because what happens if you put it on when the plant's not going to need it and you irrigate or you get a rain come through, it's going to wash down that excess nitrogen down through the soils and into the aquifer. Apply the right amount. The right amount that does not mean the exact amount that the plant can take up. You got to take into accounting losses, volatilization, nitrification, those type of things. So you need to put on the amount to make sure you get a good crop, but you don't want to put on excess amount, because any excess amount does move through the soil profile and eventually might end up in groundwater. Right place. Make sure you're putting it where the plant can get it. Whether you're using fertigation or broadcast, it really depends your type of plant you're using, whether you're trees, vines, tomatoes, row crops, or but look to see what is the most efficient and practical way to use this product and put it on to where the plant can actually grab that nitrogen right away. And use the right product. I know a lot of people use time release products, whether it's liquid, granular, and the right concentration of that product. So just a little review on the low and high vulnerable areas and requirements for reporting, because they are different, and I get a lot of questions on what am I supposed to report. So in your low vulnerable areas, farm evaluation plans are reported every 5 years. The first one actually should have come in 2015. If you're in a low vulnerable area and haven't turned a farm evaluation plan in, you need to turn one in. You still are supposed to have nitrogen management plans, but they don't have to be certified, and they're kept on site, so they don't come back to the Water Coalition. So the nitrogen management plans are kept on site. In the high vulnerable areas, for surface and groundwater, farm evaluation plans have to be reported every year. Okay. We'll be sending out the farm evaluation plans coming out here in January, this coming year. Nitrogen management plans must be certified. Okay, so I talked about the certification. So in high vulnerable areas, nitrogen management plans have to be certified. And then you must report your nitrogen usage through the summary reports, the nitrogen management plan summary reports that the coalition sends out to you. So, online reporting. So we've developed an online member portal. And this member portal allows you to submit a lot of your forms online. We're trying to make things easier for you so you don't have all the paperwork. Within this portal, you can fill out your nitrogen summary reports and submit those. You can fill out your farm evaluation plans and submit those. We also gives the member access to the portal, and you can also delegate some of that. So if you have somebody lease some property from you, or you want somebody else to fill out the paperwork for you, you can delegate it to a secondary contact, and they can go in there and actually fill out the portal for you. Again, the link is on sjdeltawatershed.org. If you haven't signed up yet, you need to click there. There's instructions on how to sign up. Once you follow the link to the main member portal, and it'll give you the password and the directions on how to get in there. We believe this should cut down a bunch of paperwork, not only on our end, but on your end. And it also allows you to go in and check to see what paperwork has been filed. There'll be a checklist that actually says, you need to file this, you haven't filed this, so you can double check to make sure that what you think you have filed is actually what has been filed. All right, question number 2, to make sure you haven't fallen asleep yet and make sure that you are still paying attention, is who is current Secretary of Agriculture for the state of California? And of course, it's Karen Ross. She used to be with the California Grape Growers Association. And she went to USDA, then she came back to California as Secretary of Agriculture for California. So make sure you answer a question at the end of this on the verification form, which is on the website, where you're going to have to click on that, fill out your name, number, membership number, and submit it to us to make sure that you get credit for watching this video. So, membership requirements for 2018 haven't changed much. Yes, you have to attend a coalition outreach event per year. This is one of your coalition outreach events, this video. Implement management practices that protect water quality. And this is, of course, the most important thing that a member can do. Because if we clean up our water quality, then a lot of our issues go away. So again, implement those management practices that are protective of water quality, and then we don't have all those exceedances in our water quality, and really cuts down the cost of monitoring for the coalition, which then in turn saves you cost. Provide information through reporting. Yes, a lot of paperwork. Yes, we have to do a lot of reporting, but it's required by the law, and we're here to help you to try to work through that process. So, of course, as any good state program is, there are possible changes to the state regulation coming down. What happened is that after our current waste discharge requirements were adopted by the Regional Water Quality Control Board, there were suits filed, and so this was elevated to the State Water Resources Control Board, which has basically the ultimate say on how all the programs for water quality function in the state. What they're looking at doing at the state level is to require that the coalition submit all of the grower information to the state, and then it can become public information. Currently, the coalition keeps all the information private, and we just report to the state a summary of everything that is going on within the coalition. The other thing that's going to be changed is everybody's going to have to report nitrogen usage. They are eliminating the high and low vulnerable areas when it comes to reporting, and so everybody throughout the coalition would have to report nitrogen. And all the farms, again, would have to report your farm evaluation plans. But one thing that they did say on this is they're going to make it 5 years for everybody, so you only have to report every 5 years. Like I mentioned, it eliminates the high and low vulnerable areas. And all growers would have to take nitrogen management classes and get self-certified or have their nitrogen management plan certification happen. So that's a big task. There's a lot of growers in our area that would have to either take the class or have somebody do the self-certification, or have somebody coming in, a CCA come in and do their certification for them. So there is an opportunity to comment on this. There is a workshop in Sacramento on December 6th. The Water Board is going to make their decision in January on whether or not to move forward with these change in regulations from the current program we have now. We're almost to the end. What I like to do at the end here is actually give you a little brief summary of what the coalition, where your dues are going for, what we're spending our money on. Some of our biggest programs, our biggest cost, of course, our management practice evaluation program, where we're actually going out and studying nitrogen uses and how is fate of nitrogen through the soils. Our trend monitoring program, which I mentioned earlier, where we're actually going to go out and monitor wells to find out, what is the trend of nitrates in those wells. And of course, one of our largest expenses is our surface water monitoring program. So here's our budget. As you can see, sampling costs for our this is surface water monitoring only, is a big chunk of our budget. The next is the implementation of the program. So in other words, this is all the stuff that the coalition does and all the contractors we hire to do to make sure the program is implemented correctly. That includes grower meetings, getting information out to growers, making sure all the packets and stuff is getting back to us. Member portal development. We spent some money this year to develop this. which in the long term, over the long term basis, we think we're going to recoup that money because of the less paperwork that us in the coalition offices have to deal with, and also the less paperwork and more efficiency for you as a grower. We're going to actually go on and see what's happening on that portal. So I really encourage people to use the member portal. Reporting. This is all the reports that we have to develop and submit to the Regional Water Quality Control Board that look at, what's happening, the fate of the pesticides within our coalition region, what's happening with the nitrates in the groundwater, and what are growers doing, what are those management practices growers are doing to implement to improve water quality. So there's a big chunk of money we use for just reporting what is going on within the coalition to the Regional Water Quality Control Board. Administration fees. This is our administrative and legal fees. These pay our salaries of the people within the coalition as well as our legal salaries, and any office expenses that we have in order to keep us up and going with our phones and computers and those type of things like that. And then there are the state fees. The state does collect a portion of that fee that you send in to us. So of the $4 you send in to us, 80 cents plus goes to the state in order to give us the privilege of being regulated. So these pay for the staff up at the state level. Our total expenses for this year are looking a little over $2.4 million. Our revenues for this year, we expect at 2.1. Yes, we are running a deficit this year, and yes, that was done on purpose. Over the past couple of years, we've actually been running a surplus. Our surplus has reserves have increased, and we are looking to decrease those reserves because we don't need as much of the reserves in as we need. So the Resource Conservation District Board want to keep our reserves down to close to $1.5 million, which is basically 6 months operating. We're over that now, so we are going to reduce our reserves this year by using some of our reserves to actually implement the program, and also give a break to the growers. Our coalition fees have dropped over the past couple of years, and we think this is prudent management for us and for the benefit of our growers. So with that, this is the end of the presentation. Thank you for listening to me. I leave this: beware of your practices. Know what waterways are next to you. Make sure you're not drifting or running into those waterways. And if we implement good best management practices, it benefits not only us in the agricultural community by having less monitoring that we have to do in the waterways, but it also is beneficial to the aquatic life and the drinking water that in the environment we live in. So thank you very much. Don't forget to fill out your verification form that is on the website. Answer those questions so you can get credit for watching this video.